Nigeria's annual inflation rose to a three-decade high in May. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics revealed that consumer prices increased by an annual 33.95%, up from 33.7% in April. Food inflation increased from 40.3% in April to 40.66% in May.
Inflation was also fueled by the naira's rapid decline against the US dollar since June of last year. Now, in recent years, food prices have risen across Nigeria as farmers abandon their farms due to insecurity in many farming states such as Benue, Plateau, Kaduna State. The situation deteriorated last year after President Bola Tinubu's administration removed subsidies on petrol, amongst other things. And of course, you know, these are conversations that we, of course, will continue to expand on, you know, and these are some of the things that also tell the reality of things currently in the country. There are people who even argue that 33.95 is not the real figure of Nigeria's inflation.
Absolutely. And this morning we're joined to look at this. We're joined by an emerging market financial analyst, Ebuka Emebina. Good morning, Mr. Emebina. Thank you very much for joining us.
And I'm happy to be here.
All right, we're seeing the numbers going up, and it doesn't seem like, I mean, the law of gravitation applies to inflation here in Nigeria. What would you say that this rate that we're seeing is saying about our economy and the journey that we've had in the past year, in the past 1 year first, and, you know, the past maybe over 10 years?
Yes, so again, the numbers we see now are a reflection of the state of infrastructure, a reflection of the living standards of the people, and also a reflection of most importantly, a reflection of the macroeconomic choices that have been made over years. Now, in terms of whether we hope to see a continued increase or decrease is dependent on how you look at the statistics. So definitely the inflation rate is rising year on year, which is usually what you'd use when you look at inflation. However, if you look at the month-on-month figures, it seems we are reaching an inflection point based on the statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics. And that is the point at which we then begin to see a decrease. So the second order effect is that there's a possibility that we are going to begin to see a decline in the inflation rate. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's a decline in the inflation rate, then we then say that, oh, well, food prices or energy prices or rental prices would then immediately decline. No, it just means that they've reached a very high rate, and then they can no longer go higher. Yeah, so let's just put it that way.
All right, so I also want you to address, people who say that 33.95% is not even the real figure. That is just the figure that, I mean, we probably can accept at this point, but it could be way worse than that. So tell us from your, perspective, do you think 33.95% really reflects Nigeria's inflation rate?
Yes, so the reality is, except as an economist or as an economic advisory firm, one goes into the market, conducts one's own statistics, and comes up with figures. We really have to rely on the official figures. That's the reality. So there's all form of statistics that flies around. You see that on social media. Some say it's as high as 99%, the inflation figures. But we still have to live by what we have, from the official statistics. And the truth is, the figure does not really matter. What matters is the reality people feel on ground, So irrespective of what the figures are, but what is the reality on ground? How affordable are basic food items? How affordable is rent? How affordable are energy prices, for people to be able to power their generators and do the basic things that they want? And then even for industries, because if we're looking at the long-term effect, how affordable is it for production to happen in Nigeria rather than happen in China? Because that's what affects whether you continue to, to import your things which you can locally produce. Importation in itself is not necessarily wrong, because sometimes you have to import what you used to produce. But the thing is, you have to undergo some level of economic activity to be seen as a productive economy. and also, most importantly, to provide jobs to people. So, and that's why when we look at these things, it's clearly a systemic problem. It's not something which can be fixed immediately. We're looking at minimum a 3 to 5 year window to get out of the worst economic crisis that we've had in decades.
Sorry,
So,
can I ask that you clarify that? You've said it will take, did you say a 5-year window? For the
at least a 3 to 5 year window.
Okay, so does this then mean that we should expect that in the next 3 to 5 years, what we are currently experiencing in terms of the effects of the inflation and the prices on, the effect on the prices of goods and services will be a reality for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yes, so what that means is, you work with standards which you've set. Nigerian Central Bank has an inflation target of 10%. Usually, in the past, we would have an inflation rate of 16, 17%, and we struggle to bring it down to a single digit of somewhere 9%. But now we're having 3 times that number. So what we are saying is that to get back to where we want to be or where we intend to be, or even where we were in the past, is a very difficult task. And, you look at pressures on the wage side. Nigeria's minimum wage is in the range of $20, and that can barely do anything. And so when you look at the pressure from workers for even higher wages and the impact that could further have on the inflation rate, government spending is not on the decline either. The annual budgetary figures continue to increase, financed through additional borrowing, and so the effect of all of that on the economy is clearly a further reintroduction of money, increase in money supply, which then fuels a continued increase in debt, fuels potentially inflation. And then you have a higher increase in the benchmark rates from the central bank, the monetary authorities, which will further fuel, inflation. And so it's a spiral. It continues that way. So for me personally, I see a minimum of a 3-year window to actually get out of this with the right economic policies. Some combination of austerity measures on the fiscal side, and then some form of assistance and aid to critical industries. And all of this has to be, you have to take away the manipulative element of that and make sure that aid or some form of fiscal support is channeled to the right sectors, the sectors that would have the most impact on the ordinary people. That's the only way we can come out of this.
Let me ask. So we've seen this get worse since 2014. During the Buhari administration, I know that there's been a few times that this same conversation was had, where they said this is the worst inflation Nigeria has ever experienced. Of course, we had a few recessions also in that period. The new administration has come into office, and once again, this is the worst. And it almost sounds like in the next couple of years, we might be hitting another worst inflation. So, you've said now it might take 3 to 5 years. If we hit another, record of worst inflation, let's push another 3 to 5 years forward. So it just really sounds like Nigeria's reality for the next, couple of years is going to be, pretty much around this. So do you think that they do not know the things that should be done to fight this fight, or they know, but Nigeria is just a very difficult project to run, and so things will just continue to get worse regardless of who and what you do?
Yes, it's a difficult place. You have macroeconomic policy decisions that need to be made. Some of those decisions are difficult decisions. We've seen them. We've seen a move towards more market-oriented policies. In the past, we had a situation whereby, macroeconomic policy was being done almost, you had blocks on the border, you had a fixed exchange rate, and things like that. So now the authorities have tried to move towards more market-oriented policies, which would attract the necessary foreign investment. However, the approach, the manner in which we've seen some of these implemented, and the level of communication, not just with the people but also with the authority, with the fiscal authorities from some of the investment destinations which we look forward to, which we look up to, so that communication has not been very clear. And some of all this, has impacted the way the country ought to have benefited from the policies which have been implemented. So I feel like we've moved towards more market-oriented policies, but the choice of the level of communication, the method, has been the problem. We've seen partial removal of fuel subsidies. We understand that they are back. We don't know the level at which they are back. There's been no clear communication on that. So we just have to assume that, maybe they are back or they're not back, or they are back to a little or high extent. We don't know. And so these are some of the challenges that we're talking about. There has to be full disclosure. I talked about channeling fiscal aid to the right sectors, priority sectors. People need to be able to feed in order to work. People need to be able to get to work. And so you have to channel your subsidies to those places where it has the most effect. And we are not seeing that. Again, with respect to the currency, which is something which we've always talked about, a lot of things are anchored on that. And so you have to look for a way whereby you stimulate local production. And so you still channel your subsidies to those places, where you have the most effect on people. So those are absolutely important things. In terms of whether we were going to continue to see a decline, over time, the government has set a target that they want Nigeria to be $1 trillion economy within the next decade. However, in reality, the forecast that by the end of this year, Nigeria would drop from the first largest GDP economy in Africa to the fourth largest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is already, something that maybe has already happened, or, it's already certain that, it's in progress. But unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Ebuka Emebina, for joining us. Sadly, you had very negative stories to share with us, talking about 3 to 5 year window before we might be getting a break from the current inflation. It's not very exciting to hear that. But thanks for sharing with us, and we'll be speaking with you again soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for having me.
You too. All right.